Welcome to the Process Breakdown Podcast, where we talk about streamlining and scaling operations of your company, getting rid of bottlenecks, and giving your employees all the information they need to be successful at their jobs. Now, let's get started with the show.
All right, John Corcoran here, host of the Process Breakdown Podcast, where we talk about streamlining and scaling operations of your company, getting rid of bottlenecks, and giving your staff everything they need to be successful at their job. Some of our past guests include David Allen of Getting Things Done and Michael E. Gerber of the E-Myth book, and many more. And today I'm speaking with Ben Hendershot, who's the COO of Altvia. Altvia is a B2B SaaS provider working in the private markets ecosystem, so providing software for private equity to help them run their operations. And we're going to get into this in a moment, talk about how they are becoming more streamlined and operating more efficiently. But first, before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by SweetProcess. Have you ever had a team member ask you the same question over and over again? It's like the 10th time you spent explaining it. Well, there's a better solution. SweetProcess is a software that makes it drop dead easy to train and onboard new staff and save time with existing staff. Not only do universities, banks, hospitals, and software companies use them, but first responder government agencies use them in life and death situations to run their operations. Use SweetProcess to document all the repetitive tasks that eat up your precious time so you can focus on growing your team and empowering them to do their best work. You can sign up for a free 14-day trial, no credit card required. Just go to sweetprocess.com, sweet like candy, SWEET process.com. All right, Ben, so it's a pleasure to talk to you. I know, your company is a software that helps private equity, but give us, in your own words, describe exactly what you guys do and how long you've been around for.
Sure. So we've been around since about 2006, so coming up here on 14 years. And we've been in the cloud the whole time. The cloud was pretty new back then, and definitely not new anymore. But what we do is we help private equity firms and other private market participants operationalize their software.
Who better to talk about operations than a company who creates software that helps others to improve their operations? So you've probably got some really good insight. So talk a little bit about what some of the challenges were for you, a couple of years ago before you started using SweetProcess. I know that you had some challenges with getting everyone on the same page and trained up. So talk a little bit about what that was like over 2 years ago.
Sure. So we had lots of different processes and procedures and documentation spread across various systems. So we had an internal wiki of sorts that had a whole bunch of instructions in it. We were big users of Google Apps, so we had all sorts of Google Docs, maybe 10 different Google Docs for the same process that are different versions over time, and in various other locations where we had procedures and processes written down. And when I heard about SweetProcess and when we implemented it was great because you can only have one version that's active of a particular procedure or process. Therefore, you minimize the likelihood that somebody's going to look up the wrong version of something and find an older version or use the one that they've downloaded to their desktop. So the fact that it was cloud-based, you log in, you can see who's using and viewing each procedure. You have approval processes to make sure that someone can check any updates that have happened to a process or a procedure. But really the big advantage to us was creating one place to go to for repetitive processes and procedures. And everybody knows, log into SweetProcess, go find that thing, do it.
Got it. And do you recall, was there any low point or, major bottleneck or something that you experienced, over 2 years ago that finally was the breaking point for you?
Probably just employees complaining, like, where do I go to find this thing? Lots of those questions. Why am I going here for this? Why is this thing over here? Why isn't there just one place? So I think that was probably the low point was as we adopted new technology and systems, they kind of became the new repository of things. And after you've adopted several new systems, you end up with lots of stuff in the old systems, lots of stuff in the new systems. SweetProcess became the one central collection point for things that are repetitive, that are done the same way every time.
And how did the team take to using it as you implemented it? Were they open to it? Was there any challenge in getting them up to speed on it and to use it?
For the most part, no challenges. It's pretty intuitive. I would say that about 3/4 of our organization are regular users. We do have a couple teams that kind of had their own processes and procedures elsewhere, mainly our engineering team, and they've kind of stayed there in whatever it is that they were using. But the balance of the organization adoption was pretty easy and straightforward.
And what is the onboarding process now when you bring on a new team member with SweetProcess? Is it just, okay, here's your login, go? Or are there particular trainings inside of SweetProcess for new people?
No, we don't leverage it too much for onboarding of new employees. So it doesn't drive our onboarding and training of new employees. So what we do when we have a new employee is literally just create their user and send it to them and say, hey, down the road, people are going to assign you tasks out of this system and you're going to go follow the instructions in there. Or if you need to know how to do something, go look in here. It's more for it's less about onboarding for us and more about our day-to-day operations of provisioning our software. Like we have instructions to help with that for our various products. If you are onboarding a new client, we do that through there, following the instructions in there. Maybe that's what you're referring to. I took onboarding as new employees. I could have been onboarding clients. yeah, too. But we also use it for lots of our internal operational procedures, doing monthly financial tasks and various other things.
Got it. Okay, that's interesting, different applications like that. So I think you kind of already answered this, but just to put a fine point on it. So, what does life look like for you now, 2 years later, having, fully implemented the system and using it in various different ways? How has it changed your typical day, saved you time and energy and money? What have the results been like?
I would say it's definitely the questions of where do I go to do X have minimized. They're less common. SweetProcess is extremely affordable, so that it didn't necessarily save us money because we didn't have additional costs that we removed when we had adopted SweetProcess, but it's so affordable that it was a non-issue. And we don't think twice about provisioning a new user in SweetProcess.
Or maybe saved you time in terms of staff time, having to figure out how to do a process that they've done previously.
Certainly saves time for all of our staff. Because they're not there's a lot of inefficiency if you have the same process with multiple versions laying around and you accidentally go to the wrong one. So in the SweetProcess world, you're going to the most current thing whenever you go in there. So there's not that inefficiency. There's also just less asking around. If you're a new employee, you don't have to ask where to go find something. You're just going into SweetProcess.
Right. So what's the next big goal for Altvia? What's the next big thing that you guys want to achieve that you're focused on? What's we're recording this in June of 2020, so it's a little bit of an uncertain time, but as you look towards the future, what are you guys excited about?
Well, I think, we're excited about a lot. We're excited to get back into the office at some point. We still don't know when that's going to be, but it's definitely a new world that we're living in right now, being home for a few months. I think the big goals for us, so to talk a little bit more about what our clients do, they're typically private equity fund managers. Our software traditionally is focused on their internal operations, and we see a lot of opportunity in them interacting with external stakeholders as opposed to just internal stakeholders. And so creating, new software and functionality that allows them to interact in this new world where you might not be having as many face-to-face meetings. So leveraging software to do that.
And for someone listening to this that has a company and they haven't fully streamlined their operations yet, what advice do you have for them that are thinking about it?
I would say, SweetProcess will definitely help you with that. But before you kind of start that implementation process, figure out what it is that you do that's repetitive, and try to just catalog where all those procedures are stored, or even if they exist. And then when you go to implement SweetProcess, you'll at least have a bit of a roadmap. Because one thing I think we may have misstepped on was just kind of ad hoc implementation of SweetProcess without thinking a ton about it beforehand. And you definitely want to have the team set up correctly, have all your users set up correctly, have like the cataloging nomenclature down before you just start creating procedures willy-nilly.
Great advice. All right, where can people go to learn more about you and Altvia?
You can go to www.altvia.com.
All right, Ben, thanks so much.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Process Breakdown Podcast. Before you go, quick question. Do you want a tool that makes it easy to document processes, procedures, and/or policies for your company so that your employees have all the information they need to be successful at their job? If yes, sign up for a free 14-day trial of SweetProcess. No credit card is required to sign up. Go to sweetprocess.com, sweet like candy, and process like process.com. Go now to sweetprocess.com and sign up for your risk-free 14-day trial.